Once upon a time, I had a friend. He was a knight, fearless, and his laughter was louder than thunder. One day, on my command, he left with a smile on his face and returned in a wooden box. I can still hear his laughter. Of course I know why you're here. You seek knowledge to strengthen your armies. I will help, but know that this path is filled with tragedy and loss. This is Foundation, and I am Lord Bara. There's no easy way to say this, but engaging with the military estate is a complicated task. If you thought that you were having a hard time simply managing your town, you may want to think again before trying to build an army. Or if you believe that you've mastered all that there is to know of monasteries and monastic life, then perhaps you're ready, and I can be your guide. There are a number of things to be aware of, and I will go over them one step at a time. I'll start with the basics, and there are a number of functions within the castle monument that don't exist anywhere else. When we're done with that, we can cover how weapons work and how to produce them, before finally covering how missions work and how you can succeed in them. No doubt by now you've been experimenting yourself and have built some sort of castle or keep. This here is the castle of Ironhaven, and if you're interested in this particular build, you can go over to the live streams playlist and you can find it under Ironhaven. But let's start at the beginning. In as simple terms as possible, there are 3 things that you can do with the castle. You can build like you do with a normal monument, and you can see all of the different sub-buildings that are available here in this list. You can also manufacture weapons, and you can also run missions. And all 3 of those activities are managed separately and have different mechanics. If you just want to get off the ground and start with the military campaigns, you'll need 3 building parts as a minimum. You'll need to build a keep, a barracks, and an armory. Everything else that you see in this list is part of the progression of the estate, and there are 6 unique functions within the progression page that you can unlock, and they each have a unique feature that contributes in some way to the military campaigns that you can undertake. Now, aside from building nice looking castles, the point of the military estate, which is known as the Kingdom Estate, is to undertake these military campaigns. But you should know that they're very expensive. Not only do they cost gold, they also cost a lot of resources in order to do them. The further you progress in them, the more they cost, but they also generate a lot of rewards as well, so they can be worth it. You'll start off by unlocking this initial castle, and that's just 25 gold. That's what will give you access to the keep, the barracks, and the armory. It's important to know that in the Kingdom Estate, each tier unlocks the ability to progress within the military campaigns. I'll talk about this later, but until you've unlocked certain things, you won't be winning the higher level missions. But when you build your first keep, you'll gain the ability to employ 5 militiamen, and this will be your first company. Here you can see the Iron Hand of Justice and some information about them. You can't really do much with them here except see what their might level is and that they are present in the keep. But essentially the keep gives you the ability to employ 5 villagers and create your first company. Something to bear in mind is that the keep can also only be built once per map. It's also a unique building part, so it's worth considering where you actually want this. As you can see, I've already built mine, but if I show you what I mean and click on build and then try and build a new castle, I don't have the ability to build a new keep. And the reason for this is that once you build a keep, it will unlock the ability to start conducting military campaigns. But the same goes for the royal office, which is pretty much like the bailiff. These are my barracks. They are used to house any soldier or militiaman or knight that I have employed within the castle. Soldiers, knights, and militiamen don't live in houses in your town, they will live in your barracks. So obviously, if you want to have a large army, you'll need to have a lot of barrack space to house them all. There's nothing too complicated about this, and if I look at the overview page on the barracks, you can see that the occupants are 23 of a possible 274. Keep an eye on your building requirements. Most of the building parts for this monument give either light or heavy fortification, but not all do, although they may require it. When you first start, the other essential sub-building that you'll need is the armory. You can think of the armory like the warehouse is in your town. It's used for storing goods, but these goods are exclusive to the castle. And as you can see, I'm able to hold rations and steel and various weapons here. You obviously don't need a lot of armory, but you'll need at least one. Otherwise, you won't be able to supply weapons to your soldiers. Additionally, rations are held here, and that's going to be important later on when you do more difficult campaigns. Now, the way that you create war rations is by building a provisioner. This is an unlock in the progression page. And as you can see here, they will take various foods that you produce in your town and they will turn them into war rations that only your militiamen, soldiers, and knights will be able to consume. You should choose which ration that you want to make depending on what you have a surplus of, but the building itself is staffed by regular villagers, not by the military staff themselves. War rations take a long time to make. And as you can see here, I've got 8 cooks working, and despite that, it still takes a very long time to make war rations. War rations aren't consumed, they're not like a monastic meal. They are used or consumed only when your soldiers or militiamen or knights are out on an actual campaign, and only on the higher level missions. It's not clear how many they need, but in my experience, it's a lot. The royal office works in much the same way that the bailiff does, with a couple of extra bits. You can unlock it in the progression page, and the royal courtier is just a regular serf from your village, so it's not a member of the military. When you've built the office and employed your courtier, you'll get access to new mandates. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll be able to see that the royal courtier has a list dedicated to themselves. If you scroll down this list, you'll be able to see that you have access to all of the things that a bailiff does. So if you hadn't built a bailiff office, you'd still be able to do your prospecting and whatnot, but the important thing is there are 2 additional options at the bottom here. If you've just started your castle journey, you may not have them yet because they will only unlock as part of the progression in the military estate. Royal duties will earn you income and will also cost you food and resources in your town. And attending the court will unlock further, more difficult missions and campaigns. You'll be presented with these missions as quests, so don't worry, you won't miss them, but they're only essential if you want to do the very high level missions. I'll talk about the needs of your militiamen, soldiers and knights a little bit later, but one of the ways to fulfill those needs is by building a mess hall. You can find this unlock in the 3rd tier of the Kingdom Estate. Think of a mess hall like the markets for the village, except it's exclusive only to the military personnel, so the knights, the militiamen and the soldiers. Just in case there was any confusion, this has nothing to do with war rations. They just eat regular food like your villagers do, so it's just rustic and refined food. Another high-level need that only knights will require is a private quarters. So you won't need to worry about this until you get to this stage. It's not particularly complicated in any way, it's simply a building that will satisfy their need. And that will conveniently bring us on to talk about needs in general. Let me find you the examples of the needs that are in the military estate. So there are 3 types of military personnel: the militiaman, the soldier and the knight. And if you compare them, you can see that they all have quite different needs. While the militiamen are fairly easy to keep happy, you can treat them pretty much like serfs. The soldiers, on the other hand, are a bit more demanding. They're more like commoners. And the knight, being the most demanding of all, have needs closer to a citizen. Something that may catch you out when you're thinking about promoting these military personnel is how you go about it. If you look at the top of the militiaman's character sheet, you can see that I have an option there to promote him. And that option is there because he's reached level 6. But the soldier has it grayed out. And the reason for that is that he's not high level enough. Once he reaches level 5, he will get the ability to be promoted, and you can increase the level by sending them out on missions. You can promote them from their character sheet, or you can do it from the promotion page here. But if you look carefully, you will see that there's an additional requirement to promote a knight, and that is you will need at least 5 soldiers, on top of each one of them having a high enough level. This is the only place that you can see this information. It's a little bit hidden. But as you can see, knights are expensive to maintain and difficult to gain. They're going to require a lot of resources from your town, and they're also going to take a long time to make because you're going to need to do a lot of missions first and wait enough time to gain levels for the soldiers in order to start promoting them. But if you want to embark on the military campaigns and do the missions, you will need the soldiers to do the higher level missions. So this whole process, is quite time consuming. If you recall, I said that when you build the keep, it gives you the ability to employ 5 militiamen. At some point not long after that, you'll be wondering, how do I get more militiamen? And the answer is you do that by building encampments. This is the spear encampment here. They're unique building parts and they all look like tents. Each encampment gives you the ability to employ 5 militiamen, which you can then promote to soldiers. And there are 3 types of encampment. Once you've got access to tier 1 in the Kingdom Estate, you can unlock them individually. So you can get the bows or the spears or the swords as you see fit. This is the sword encampment that I've got highlighted here. You'll probably notice that this sword encampment has 10 slots for militiamen. And the reason for that is because I've unlocked the command post, which is in the second tier of the Kingdom Estate. The command post is also a tent. It's a unique build item, and it has one function only, and that is to expand the capacity of your encampments. So, as a working example, I would like to increase the capacity for this spear encampment here. I can only have 5 militiamen in there at the moment, and I want to double that. So if I just click on this spear encampment, or I could find it within the castle and open up the build menu. If you're not quite sure where it is, you can find it by clicking on this filter at the top here, and you'll find it under improvements. You only get one option, and it's this red tent. So just go ahead and grab that, and you have to place it down quite near to the encampment, so you can't go too wild with your building design. But once that's done, it will give me the ability to add 5 more men. There we have it, and one thing to bear in mind, you can only have one of these per encampment, so if you wanted more, you'd have to build a new encampment. Now, what would a soldier be without a weapon to wield? The interesting thing about weapons is that they are not produced within the castle monument. Here's my bowyer's hut here, and he's making bows, obviously. But I didn't gain access to this building by going into the build menu for the castle monument. Instead, you do it the normal way that you'd build buildings within the town, and that is you go to the build menu at the bottom, and you'll find it under production, and you'll have 3 options for each of the weapons. I said it before, to get access to those buildings you unlock them in the first tier of the Kingdom Estate, but there is an upgrade for them as well in the 3rd tier, which gives you access to higher quality weapons that do more damage, so you'll be able to complete higher level missions and quests. Let's take a little wander over to the other 2 weapons buildings that are in the town. These 2 buildings here are where I make the spears and the swords. These buildings work just like any other production building that you have in your town, so they employ a serf or a commoner, or they're ideally suited to a citizen, but they'll take any. So you can control their efficiency and production output like that. You can also sell all of the weapons that you make for quite a decent amount of profit, so it's worth setting this production chain up if you're able. Each one uses a different set of resources to produce the weapons. The sword, for example, are tools, iron and coal, whereas the spears are wood and iron. If you've unlocked the higher tier weapon, you'll be able to select which one you produce via this drop down here. Each of the weapons has its own unique strength stat, and that will be important for when you're actually running missions, because that strength stat is important, but I'll talk about that later. If you take a look at the 2nd tier of weapon that you're able to produce, the higher level tier, you'll notice that they have the requirement for steel. And if you're wondering how you produce steel, the answer is you don't. Steel can only be purchased in trade from another town. If I go over to the Royal Book and go into trade routes, At the bottom of the page you'll see Castle Harbour, and this is the only town that will supply you with steel. And yes, you're reading that number correctly, it's 16 gold per steel. So don't expect to be making those higher level weapons unless your economy is absolutely booming. This building here is my hospital, or the healing house as it's known. You can unlock it in the 3rd tier of the progression path of the kingdom. It'll come as no surprise that the point of it is to speed up the recovery time of injured militiamen or soldiers when they come back from a mission. To get an overview to set and control missions, go to the Army book. There are 4 pages in here, but there are 2 main ones really that you need to pay attention to. This one is the company list, and this one is the mission list. So let's start here. On the left hand side you can see that there's a list of all of the missions that you have available, and you can see them all from the very start. Some of them will be open to you straight away, and some of them will be locked off until you've upgraded or promoted or met some sort of requirement. Let me explain how to read this information just in case it's not quite making sense. This is the mission title, Strategic Patrol. This is how difficult it is. You'll need a strength of 18 or more. You can find out if you meet that requirement by looking at your company list over here. This is your reward. In this case, it's just a bit of gold. This is your performance reward. This is what your companies will need in order to level up. This is the grade of the mission. There are 3 grades. This is the lowest grade, grade 1. This mission is also grade 1 with some extra information saying that your weapons might break. The next set of missions are a slightly different colour, and that's because they're grade 2 missions. In order to undertake grade 2 missions, you will need war rations. It doesn't tell me how many war rations, but get producing them early if you can, because in my experience, it takes a lot, it just doesn't tell you how much. I've already unlocked this 2nd tier of missions, but before I did, I'd had to have completed the skirmish season mission before I could continue on. So if I look down at the 3rd tier of missions, you can see that there are some additional requirements for that. And there are 2 separate missions that I need to do before these will open to me. If I look over on the right hand side, I can select a company, and I can also select a mission, and then I can choose who I want to deploy on that mission. Here you can also see the rank that they have, what weapon they have, and how strong they are. You can have multiple missions running at the same time. It all depends on how many companies you have. I have the skirmish season mission and the Blade Brigade company selected here, and if I deploy them, it says I have a fair chance of success. These 3 little icons here are telling me injury, death toll, and strength, and that'll be important when they return. Over on the company page, I'll get a better overview of what all of the companies are doing. Over on the left hand side, you can see that there's a list of the 4 companies that I have in Ironhaven, and if I select a company, I can control what I want them to do. They can go on missions, or they can patrol and guard in the town. Patrolling and guarding is part of the security need that villagers have for building housing. This is an additional and optional way to do that instead of using the manor estate. You can also choose which weapon that they use, and here you can see a list of all of the weapons and what strength that they have. The Iron Hand of Justice is a grade 3 company, and that's because they have a knight. You can explore each individual combatant by clicking on their name, and you'll get their character pop up. And if you hover over their rank, you'll get a pop-up that explains their rank, how to promote them, and what they need to gain promotion. The Iron Hand of Justice is a custom name. If you wanted to change that, you can do it here by clicking on the little quill. And if you wanted to change their banner, you can do that here. It was brought to my attention by the legendary Sir Abel that it is in fact still custom for military companies to have their own heraldry. I wasn't aware of that, so this is in fact very important information for each individual company. The combatant list is exactly what it sounds like. It's a list of all your combatants. And your battle history is a list of all your successes and failures. You can see down here that I've recently had 3 deaths. I'm not proud of that, but I heard that they fought gallantly and died with honor. If you do manage to fight your way through all of the missions, don't forget that in the mandates at the bottom under the Royal Courtier, there's an additional mission to attend the court, and this will give you something additional. I'm not going to spoil this for you. I don't think that's very fair. This is a guide, it's not a completionist guide. But if you do manage to complete that, you will have a reward waiting for you. Well, this one was a long time coming, but that's all I've got to say on the topic of castles. So I'll just say, if you have been, thank you for watching, thank you for listening. If you have been, leave a comment letting me know what your companies are called. This has been Foundation, and I have been Lord Bara.